So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, if you are in the Arab region like me today. I just want to start by welcoming all of you in our third session of the AFF members-led sessions. Those sessions are designed by our members who want to discuss certain subject matters and increase awareness about a specific topic amongst the AFF larger network. Today's session is actually led by two of AFF members, Senate for Orphans and the SOS Children's Villages, the Gulf Office. Just a quick intro about our about the two organizations. Senate for Alternative Parental Care is a nonprofit civil society that has the aim of creating a world where orphans shape their own future. Since its establishment, Senate has been introducing innovative solutions to reform the alternative care ecosystem in Egypt and ensure a better future for children and youth without parental care. Throughout the journey, Senate has offered a wide range of services in the alternative care field. This includes the development of care homes, training for caregivers and professionals, enhancement of the kafala system, preparation of youth for self-reliance and aftercare, amongst other services, of course. As for the SOS Children Villages, it is a global organization that works with children, families, communities, and states to prevent family breakdown and ensure that children's rights are met. The organization has the vision that no child should grow up alone and to ensure that every child grows with love, security, and respect. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our two speakers for the day, Yasmin El-Hagri and Harry Goodall. Yasmin is the executive director of Senate. She has discovered her passion for serving children when she was at college, when she became an active member of Volunteers in Action, which is a leading students' club for supporting orphans. She was elected the club president in 2003. 6 years later, she left her job as an associate creative director in a very well-established advertising agency to a newly established NGO, Senate, to fulfill her dream and support orphans. Yasmin dreams of a day when all children are raised happily and safely within their biological, extended, or foster family, and that orphaned youth will be empowered with the necessary skills to improve their lives and lead them to a brighter future. Harry is the managing director of the SOS Children Villages Gulf Area Office. Harry is a seasoned executive and leader with years of experience in directing NGOs and businesses. He has a track record of commitment to serving the underserved through entrepreneurship and the establishment and growth of NGOs. Harry directed national and area programs and offices for several international organizations, notably Habitat for Humanity International, serving as Area Vice President, Africa and the Middle East for a decade. He was Chief of Operations for One Global Economy and Executive Director for the USA at REAL, formerly known as Homeless International. Besides that, Harry has also founded several businesses in Congo, including river and road transport, coffee and timber export, and aviation services. Upon returning to the US, he founded and directed Africa Development Group, a corporation committed to building trade relationships between the US and Africa and the Middle East, with a focus on trade and development projects. Thank you, Harry and Yasmin, for being here with us and leading the sessions. Just to kick off the session, I would like to mention that 1 in 10 children and young people around the world are separated from their families, many of them abandoned and neglected. And more orphans are created every day due to humanitarian crises that we see on a daily basis. Traditionally, orphanages have been considered the best place to care for children and young people without parental care. But that thinking is changing. In today's session, our esteemed speakers will delve into the critical movement of how to de-institutionalize, which focuses on transitioning children from orphanage settings to nurturing family-based care, and will explore the meaning and objective of family-based care and how this approach can help ensure a safe and positive experience for every orphan child. Yasmin and Harry, the floor is all yours.
Yasmin, would you like to do the overview and then I'll kick off with the first section?
Yes, sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Walid, for this comprehensive introduction. and it's an honor being among AFF members and other people interested in this topic. Let me walk you through the session outline. Today, Harry and myself will be introducing what do we mean by alternative care for children and youth without parental care, and what are the UN guidelines and the key principles of these guidelines. Also, we'll be talking about transforming institutional care into family-based care, which we call it de-institutionalization, but we prefer the term family-based care rather than de-institutionalization, and we will explain this later. Also, we'll be talking about the role of philanthropists to bridge the gap. And finally, we'll be talking about building a safe transformation without harming actually the children, and how to have a safe and smooth transition to family-based care and the role of other entities like whether you are a policymaker, a donor, or a program manager, regardless of your role. Harry, would you like to start?
Sure. So first of all, before I get into the topic, thank you, Walid and Yasmin, for this amazing opportunity to be able to share some perspective. I'd like everyone to take it as kind of combined what we know and some numbers to go along with it. Obviously, that situation is always fluid. What we do know is the problem with orphans and the number of people orphaned, the number of children without parental care continues to grow. So we'd like to kind of go through this. If you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the chat and we'll get to that. I believe, Walid, we've got some time at the end to do that. So we'll go essentially starting with this one. Let's see, let's go back one more.
Which one?
One more to the actual topic first.
Okay, this one?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to look first at what is alternative care, because it means different things to different people. So we're going to give you our current definition. And so we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to look at what does it mean, children without parental care. So first of all, alternative care is essentially any formal or informal arrangement set up for a child who is living outside parental care. That might be intentionally, it might be unintentionally. It could be anyone that's actually focused on the well-being, the protection of that child. That's what we consider alternative care. Now, who are we focused on here? We're focused on children without parental care. That means any child who does not sleep in the care of a and for any reason. That means children who are separated from their parents, children who run away, those that where the parents, and we'll look at some of the gaps and issues later on, but there are a wide variety of reasons for that. Next slide. So we're using some old numbers, but they have just increased. I think this number today, what are we talking about? When we want to define the problem, what are we looking at? So back in 2017, the UNICEF decided there were 5.5 million children without parental care in just the Middle East and North Africa. Now, we all know those numbers aren't correct. The actual number is much greater, but based on their best determination, using governmental statistics, those from NGOs and others, community-based organizations, that's what they determined. Currently, today, or at that time, there were 140 million children without parental care in the world. So I think we can agree this is an issue that needs to be addressed. So why does this happen? I mean, obviously the list is longer than this, but we're gonna look at very specifically why children need loving care and how to do it. And our recommendation is more the alternative care and care homes rather than the institutions. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But first of all, what are the reasons? Well, first of all, I think we can all agree, poverty. The number of people living on less than $2 a day in the world is just staggering. I'm not even going to give you the number because in reality, no one knows, but it is hugely widespread. Parents can't afford to take care of the children. They start sending them off to either family or relatives, or sending them out to beg and make their own money because they just can't care for them. Obviously, because of birth control or lack thereof, there are also a lot of children born out of wedlock. With all the crises and catastrophes these days, obviously you can lose one or even both parents. And it's staggering to think about the number of children with both parents gone in this world. Because of the harsh systems about those that have less resources. A lot of times those that are already poor can then end up being in prison. It could be from bad judgment or actual, infringements, law breaking, but oftentimes it's just not having resources, being at the wrong time, the wrong place. I don't want to spend too much time talking about that. Then having severely mentally ill parents. Now, just because someone is mentally ill, it doesn't keep them from having children. And so when they're born to mentally ill parents, then obviously other either community-based organizations, relatives or whomever need to step forward and take care of them. It's just too big of an issue for the government to cover all of. And broken families, obviously divorce or remarriage of a parent. There are so many stories about evil stepmothers and stepfathers. I think we can see a global pattern that if this is not if this spouse is not the parent of this child, then obviously, oftentimes there's not the same love and concern for that poor child to make sure they're well taken care of. And of course, war and conflict, everything going on today from Palestine, Ukraine, Sudan, Yemen. I mean, the list goes on and on. So the part of the problem in strife-riddled areas, it's very difficult to get accurate numbers and to engage with groups that can actually be part of the solution there. So we could spend 2 hours on just the problems, but we're going to talk now about what's been decided at the highest level. So the UN came out in 2009 with a list, an international document, which I originally thought Yasmin wanted us to present today to all of you. Fortunately, we're going to keep it in a nutshell with the two main pillars. So you can breathe deeply. You don't have to go for coffee or anything. And these are the two pillars. So what are the indicators needing to be addressed, and how can you determine what action should be taken? The first is necessity. Children enter the alternative care system only when necessary. So it's not like anyone is going to take, or the UN doesn't mandate, and governments don't mandate, taking children away from parents in a functioning home. It's you remove the parents, remove the children from parents that are doing damage or put the children at risk, but most of the time, the children are actually abandoned. So the number one pillar is necessity, only when there's a need. And the second pillar is suitability. So that means choosing the most appropriate place of care to the needs and circumstances of each child. Now, my family and I play a game, and it's when we get together in big groups, if someone's complaining too much, we just say, oh, let us help you. So then the problem becomes, it's like, let's help someone else with their problem while ignoring our own. So the whole point there is we are committed to listening to the children and making sure that their voices are heard when determining the suitability. And that obviously it varies with age, but the whole idea of institutionalization of orphans has been damaging, and we are committed to moving away from it in a wise manner.
Thank you, Harry, for giving us this important foundation. Before we start talking about what do we mean by transforming institutional care into family-based care, or what we call it de-institutionalization. Actually, before defining what this de-institutionalization mean, I would like to walk you through different forms of alternative care. When we talk about alternative care, we do not mean only orphanages, and we do not mean only foster families or kafala families, because in the Arab word, we call it kafala, which is equal to adoption in the Western society. But we mean that it has to be serving the best interest of the child. So when we talk about the best interest of the child, it is to work on keeping the child with their biological families and working hard to prevent the reasons behind the separation of a child from their biological families. If we couldn't, and we have to, and it's necessary, as Harry told us, to split or to separate the child, then we look at other relatives, and we call this the extended families or kinship, to place the child within their extended families, within his extended family. So this is the second preference, or with a foster family or kafala family, because this is more of a family-based care. The third preference would be small group homes, which is actually people who are with us today, maybe from Egypt or other countries, these orphanages with very few number of children, 5, 6, or 7 children, we call it small group homes, or sometimes we call it just orphanage. So why it's small group home and why it's a third preference? Because you can actually provide individual care for a smaller number, and it could be more similar to a family rather than an institution. The fourth form of alternative care is the institutional care homes. And let me show you a picture just to make sure what do we mean by institutional care home. People who are familiar with the orphanages in Romania, for example, many years ago, that was the traditional look or form or appearance of institutional care homes. They have very common characteristics, and they have actually a large number of children. They could reach to more than 200. In Egypt, we had actually few of them, very few. And the intention was actually to serve more. But sometimes when it's a good intention, but the application is actually harming the child because they want individual care. So the common and the consequence of institutional care and the common characteristic of them are actually that they are characterized by harmful living arrangement and settings. For example, the ventilation, the light circulation, for example. Sometimes they are very poor. Also, sometimes we don't have enough privacy for the children and youth living in institutional home because of the large number. So it's actually harming them. Also, they have fixed routines, and it hinders them to be able to make choices, which actually affect their life skills and their self-confidence and independence, because they lack the skill of making a decision. So they don't get to choose what to eat. They don't get to choose where to go. They don't get to choose what to wear. They don't have this luxury. Also, usually, these big institutions are usually placed in a remote area where actually it's isolated from their biological families, because some of the children, surprisingly, worldwide, they discovered that 80% of the children in institutional homes or orphanages are actually, they actually have known parenthood. Also, they endure physical and psychological, emotional and social harm. And finally, they experience violence, abuse, usually more likely to experience violence and abuse and neglect and exploitation, because it's very hard to enforce protection mechanism in large places. So because of all these reasons, there is a movement towards family-based care rather than institutional care. What do we mean by de-institutionalization or moving towards family-based care? In the Arab world, we noticed that many countries started to say or announce that we are going to shut down all orphanages. This doesn't mean deinstitutionalization. This is not the meaning of deinstitutionalization. So the meaning of deinstitutionalization is to reduce separation of children from their families. And this is where we call it protection. And sometimes we call it gatekeeping. There has to be mechanisms in every country. And this is one of the principles or the guidelines in the UN guidelines for alternative care, to stop or prevent the separation of children from their biological parents. And that's why strengthening the family-based care is very important. Also, it means reintegration of children into their biological families. As I mentioned before, 80% worldwide of the children placed in institutional homes have known parents. So we need to work on reintegrating them and to figure out what was the problem and empower the families rather than separating the child from their biological families. The third thing is to promote alternative families, which is the kafala system. And finally, to reduce large-scale social care institutions. So these four mechanisms are actually the meaning of deinstitutionalization. We cannot actually define deinstitutionalization that it's one of the four mechanisms. It's only reducing large scale. No, it's not only one of the four, it's all of them. Harry, would you like to add anything to this section before you start?
Well done.
Section?
Very well explained. Thank you. And now, so now we know what some of the gaps are. We know we've defined deinstitutionalization. And now we're going to look at the so what section, which means what can be done? What's the role of philanthropic and I guess just general organizations to bridge this gap? Okay, so once again, we're going to start with what's missing. So what's missing is we have prevention mechanisms, and that's we don't have those. If they were sufficient, then all the children would immediately be taken care of and put in alternative care. Legislation framework, there are laws about orphan children, but so often, like even with education, they're not actually implemented. So this is just something that needs to keep on going forward and being highlighted from at every level, the highest level, local level, mid-level, everyone who's involved, we invite you to participate in that. Social workforce. There is not enough money to pay for people to focus and address all of these things. So we just can't address it with a paid workforce. It needs to be increased, but it's not the only solution. Aftercare system, even if there's the best care, for example, in SOS Children's Villages, the name came from we're 75 years old, working in 136 countries. The concept was after World War II in Austria and Germany to set up villages to provide protection for the children. So that is providing homes, care homes such as the one Yasmin described. But now we would focus, and then until the youth became 18, they would stay with us. We've actually expanded that now in a concerted continuing effort until they're 24 to make sure they're either trained in the skill or accompanied through college. So after care, you can't just have a drop off. There needs to be something carrying on after that. We need more specialized local NGOs. One of the things that we're doing now with SOS Children's Villages is we've got something called the Family Strengthening Program, and it addresses exactly what Yasmin was talking about. It's like, how can we work with community organizations to determine what some of the at-risk parents and families, what their issues are, and then help them address that. So I think the one key gap and a growing sector is specialized local NGOs. We need more of them. We need local experts, because that's the only way to get things done. The UN is not going to be able to accomplish this. It will take a concerted effort from people in the community. What's being done? How do we monitor and evaluate it? This is all over the map and is not simplified and standardized enough to be able to give us the appropriate lessons to adjust those working on the issues. Case management. Too often, people are like, oh, that's not my job. So you have government social workers, and they're just overloaded. They can't do it. So then they depend on the local community organization, who are also overloaded. So just who takes care of a child once that child, he or she, is identified, and helps make sure they get the best system, the best care for them based on their situation all the way through. Awareness. I mean, if you if you ever visit Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, you'll understand there is no need to preach awareness about the children without parental care, because you can't help but be bombarded with children in the street. And the case is true all over the world, not every country, but it's just a growing issue. So being made aware in general of what's going on and why it is, that's essentially a big part of what we're talking about today. And then what do you do with children with disabilities, special needs? It takes a lot more resources to care for them. And they also need the same level of focused love and care in a smaller home. So rather than just putting them all together, we need to address that. Family reintegration. Everything is cyclical. Excuse me. So a father or a mother might have been thrown in jail or got sick, not able to help. But then once they do get out of jail or gain their health, who is there to help bring the family back together? It's a huge issue. And just once again, continued research. We don't know enough about what's going on to be able to intelligently and practically address this. So there's good news. We have recommendations, we have goals, and many of these are focused on the and you can read them down at the bottom, the sustainable goals. And it starts in our model. What we're thinking is, let's start with the focus on the children and youth. And let's think, first of all, about their needs. And then if we go to helping to focus on and support the caregivers, because many people are willing, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the knowledge, they don't know the best practices. So to continue to provide resources, training, and oversight to these caregivers is key. So that brings us to the next one. We've got to have people supervising and making sure there are limited amount of abuses. Because I say limited because you can't prevent everything. No matter, everyone knows a family. If you have a family with 6 or 7 kids, there's going to be one troublemaker or two in there that's going to create issues. So we need someone watching the caregivers to assure that the child's rights and care is being protected and properly supervised. To that issue, we need systems. Systems are dictated by legislation, but it also has to be a call for the adequate resources from government. Governments too often pass a law and then they don't provide the resources necessary to fulfill that legislation. Well, I will go back to education, and I'll use Africa as a case in point, and that every country has a law where children have to go to primary school. Unfortunately, the governments too often do not have an appropriate number of schools for that, or they're not paying the teachers enough. So that creates issues and more challenges for the parents as far as local, demands for educational costs and whatnot. The key issue is, I think, for us to make it unacceptable for children to be abandoned, left without care. Now, we understand, and we've gone over some of the reasons for not having parental care, but if they don't have care from their parent, we as a society, and a variety of societies, obviously there are different ones, but we should make it together unacceptable to be able to abandon a child or for any child to grow up alone. As Walid already said, we have a commitment, we have a belief, we have a goal, a vision that no child should grow up alone.
Thank you, Harry. I just would like to add something about the caregivers, whether they are families or social workers or alternative mothers, that in addition to the need of building their capacity, we need also to work on improving the work conditions, because it's really difficult. It's not an easy job, and it needs lots of psychological support, and it needs also to get better pay, because this is one of the things, of the reasons why the turnover of the caregivers is really high when it comes to social workers and alternative mothers working in social care homes.
And just if we can stay on that, for example, our original model, we would have homes with a paid staff who would be the mother, and then we have anywhere from 7 to 10 children in each home. That mother is a real mother. She's 24 hours a day with these children. So you can imagine a mother with 10 children. So we hired additional help, an auntie, to be able to help and second that. But these children do not go for adoption. Once they go into one of our homes, then they grow up and they go all the way through. So they have these brothers and sisters living together, getting to know each other. But part of the problem, what we internally decided is they grow up special. They grow up privileged because they're living in our villages. They have all of their health care, education, clothes paid for. So they have essentially, we've separated them from the community. So what we're focused on now is moving families out of the village with the same care home opportunity, but focus on being an integral part of the community. So we're actually on the cusp of that transition right now, which speaks exactly to the deinstitutionalization. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, now we need to agree that deinstitutionalization or moving towards family-based care is not the same for every country. That's why contextualization is very important to ensure that you are meeting the needs of the children and you are actually serving the best interest of the child. Before talking about the steps towards family-based care, we need to align on the child development stages in care homes, whether it's care homes, orphanages. There are too many terms for the same thing. So since the child actually enters the orphanage, I will use the word orphanage now to make it easier, till the age 18, this phase, actually the target and the goal of this phase should be preparing the children for self-reliance, to be independent. And fortunately, many orphanages was actually focusing only on looking after the child, giving them education, health, and nutrition, but not preparing them to start an independent life. And this is where it caused a lot of problem, that when the children reached 18 and they have to leave the care home, there was a great resistance from the children because they were not prepared. They had lots of fears. Therefore, it's recommended that it's from starting 14 years, the caregivers and the management in the orphanage will start actually working on a plan for the aftercare to prepare the child for the aftercare phase. The aftercare starts from 18, in some countries to 26, other countries there is no aftercare, and other countries maybe 21. There is a gap, as we mentioned before, as Harry mentioned in the gaps, the list of gaps in the aftercare system. So we shouldn't expect an 18-year-old youth girl or a female or male to be able to live on his or her own completely by the age 18 without having a social support system. That's why from 18 to 26, it is recommended to start gradually help the youth to start being independent. So there is a partial support from the orphanage, and partially the youth is actually depending on herself or himself. Starting 26, they usually graduate from the aftercare system. And here I'm talking about the ideal situation. This is not happening everywhere. This is what we aspire actually to happen. So from 26, they graduate from the aftercare. And here we always advocate that still they need after graduation support because they don't have social support system. There are no uncles, no aunties, no grandparents, nothing. So they need a kind of support even after they graduate from the aftercare phase. Okay. The key steps towards family-based care, and here I will be sharing also what we did in Egypt. First of all, we need to understand the context. And when I talk about the context, I'm talking about demographics, psychographics, and the gaps and the leverage points. What are the numbers of children within each orphanage? How many are they? The gender, the age, challenges, the geographical distribution, the psychological challenges, the workforce, the norms and culture in the country. These are very important information to be able actually to find the right definition of de-institutionalization that fits the country and the context. For example, when the de-institutionalization movement started in 2019, in Egypt, the media started advocating for shutting down orphanages in Egypt. And when the civil society, when Senate started to talk to the Ministry of Social Solidarity and we did a research, we found out that most of the orphanages in Egypt have actually average of 10 to 20 children. So they are not big, large scale institutional homes. This is the first thing. The other finding, we found out that the majority of the children within orphanages are actually 12 years old onward. So they cannot be adopted or cannot be placed in kafala, in the kafala system within families, because the older age, usually it's harder to place them in the kafala system. So these findings actually gave us some insights that we need to work on the aftercare and on preparing the children leaving the orphanages and the kafala as well, but we need to weigh our efforts towards the needs of our society and needs of the existing children right now in Egypt. Then we create a shared vision. And as much as the word sounds very easy, it's really difficult. It requires time, effort, and patience, because you need to include all stakeholders. And when I say all stakeholders, the key stakeholder are the children and youth themselves. As Harry said, we need to listen to them. We need to communicate to them, what do we mean by de-institutionalization? Because the first thing, what happened when the media started advocating for shutting down the orphanages, the orphans themselves, they panicked. They started to say, where are we going to go? What's your plan? We don't understand what's being said. So you need to include them to start thinking with you, what would be the best thing for them? I remember one of the girls, she was 21 years old. She's living with 60 girls in an institutional home. She said, at this stage, I really don't need to be in a small home. I don't care. What I care is to be ready for tomorrow. I need to be ready to leave the orphanage rather than placing me or separating me from my sisters, because they call each other sisters and they consider each other sisters. So this is very important while shaping a shared vision. The social workers in the Ministry of Social Solidarity with all levels, decision makers, policy makers, donors, NGOs, media, all these are only some examples of different stakeholders. Then we develop a roadmap. And when I say a roadmap, we need to balance between short terms and quick wins and between long term. We need also to divide this roadmap into phases. And we need to be patient with the pace, because here we are dealing with with souls. So we cannot actually rush into executing things without considering that the children are already traumatized, being separated from their biological families and being separated from the high turnover of the caregivers they used to raise them. Finally, in the roadmap step, we need also to work on the root causes. So we need to pay attention to the gatekeeping and the prevention part, which we talked about earlier. Finally, we assess the readiness. And here we need to assess the legislation, the existing legislation framework, the existing systems, the workforce and the resources, the available resources, the financial resources and the workforce or the manpower resources and the culture as well. This is very important when we assess the readiness to have a realistic plan when we execute the vision and the roadmap. There are key principles that we need to consider whether we are working on a strategy or moving towards the family-based care, or whether we are actually designing or implementing an intervention or a program for youth and for children and youth without parental care. The first thing is it has to be right-based. We are not doing this out of sympathy. We are doing it out of right-based, and that's why we need to back up our work with international laws supporting and clarifying and highlighting that what we are doing is giving them the rights. We are not actually giving it out of pettiness or sympathizing with their conditions. The second thing is being child-centric. We need always to remember and ask ourselves, what's the best interest of the child? And there is no one best interest for all children. Each child has his best interest. This is very important to remember. The third principle is actually to understand what do we mean by trauma-informed care. We need to understand that whenever we design an intervention or a program or even a social media campaign, we do not trigger the trauma that the children went through. The participatory approach, I think most of us are familiar with this approach, and Harry highlighted this approach, which is we need to include and listen to them, not only to take their opinion, no, to empower them to take part in designing even the program. The fourth principle is social integration, and maybe this is something related to what Harry mentioned with the SOS villages, that they started to think about integrating the children within the community rather than putting them in a village that might contribute to their social isolation. Being holistic. For example, at Sanad, we had a program for the economic empowerment of the youth who graduate from orphanages. And one of the things we paid attention to is we cannot work on economic empowerment without working on social empowerment, without working on their trauma, without working on ensuring that they have their fundamental needs, food, transportation, shelter, etc. I cannot work on development if they don't have their basic needs. The final principle is sustainability, or having a sustainable mechanism, which means if the fund is not there, if the project ends, what's going to happen to these children? Did we empower them enough? Did we empower enough NGOs to continue? Do we have the right system in place? Do we have the right legislation to protect their rights? Or it's just a project or a program and that's it. Once it ends and once the fund is not there, halas, everything, we reset back to square one. This is very important when we work with children and youth without parental care. Finally, before I will end, I will ask Harry, would you like to add anything?
Just well done again. Thank you. And I think what we would appreciate is hearing from you. Obviously, this isn't a solutions base. It's highlighting some of the issues, some of the gaps, some of the work that we're currently doing, the experiences we have, but essentially we would like this to be an invitation to grow the conversation and invite each and every one of you and those that you think of might be interested to collaborate, because no one is going to be able to do this on their own. No one, no government, no community-based organization. So the more we have people and institutions, governments involved, then the the more impact we can have, the more children we can care for. So I think just before we get into conversation, both of our emails are here. We'd love to hear directly from you all individually after this, but we're also keen to continue the conversation going forward. So, Yasmin, thank you. It's been an honor. But what your comments before Waleed opens it up for questions or comments?
I just thank you so much, Harry, for your feedback. And I just want to add something that I think me and Harry, we discussed this before. I will go to this slide because to relate to. Many organizations are working on the SDGs, but they are not including children and youth without parental care, although what they are doing might actually benefit children and youth without parental care. What I want to say that you don't have to design a separate or a program for children and youth without parental care. You can include them in your existing programs or activities or mandates, because at the end of the day, they are children or youth. So if you have something related to women empowerment, there are beautiful young ladies graduated from orphanages who need your programs. If you're working on youth development, we have lots of youth without parental care who are in a desired need to be included with other youth. So think about it differently. Maybe you don't have a program specialized for children without parental care, but maybe you are working already on other domains or other pillars that could actually benefit them, and you could include them. And we are always here to support and help. Thank you, Harry, and thank you, Waleed, for
Just
giving.
one more last thing,
Yes, sure.
Yasmin. I would
Sure.
just say, yes, absolutely, there. But Waleed, before we open it up, we're open to questions, comments, experiences, observations, whatever. So it doesn't have to be ask the experts. It's like, let's have an open conversation. Feel free to share like we were sitting around the table sharing a meal, please.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Yasmin. That was very informative, brilliant, lots of knowledge, and you're right. This is the time to have the conversation. I see some questions. I see 4 questions in the Q&A. So I'm just going to take them one by one and read them out loud, and then let Yasmin and Harry answer. So we have the first question: if you can elaborate on recommended strategy to support orphans within the conflict zones, such as Syria, Yemen, and Gaza, of course.
Okay, Yasmin, do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Go ahead, Harry.
Okay, we are working currently in both Syria and Gaza, and I'm happy to share more experience about that. I think the recommended strategy is to know who exactly as Yasmin has described it, is to know the players, know the situation on the ground, and then reinforce them. So we have some villages in Syria, and we have a village in Rafah in Gaza. We have had to evacuate most of those children to our village and our team in Bethlehem, but we have a certain number, I believe it's around 70 children in our care, some in our alternative care, others in family strengthening, that we have relocated inside Gaza to someplace else. So if we're talking about recommended strategy, you have to engage at the top. So we were in contact with the government officials. We're in touch with the other NGOs, letting them know what we're doing, how we're doing it, so we can, we can address that. We are not in Yemen, and we have been asked by a couple of groups. I'm based in Dubai, and we have been approached by two people wanting us to come and work there. Our strategy is to connect with local players, those that are already interested or invested in that work, the care for children, the focus on children, providing quality and loving care, and then follow up with that. So that's the overarching strategy. It is time consuming, resource consuming, but we are currently very, very active in both Syria and Gaza.
Right.
And Palestine, I should say, because we're taking care of the children that have been evacuated to Bethlehem.
Thank you, Harry.
I just want to add one thing, because some of the children were actually transferred from their country to protect them to another country. One important thing is actually to protect their identity. This is one of their rights.
Yeah.
To ensure if we are going to place them within families, they have actually, this family has to actually have the same nationality to ensure that we actually communicate to them their culture, their values, etc. If they are going to be placed in orphanages, also we need to protect their identity, because this is very important, and this is coming from child right, a right-based actually approach. It's not like a luxury.
Thank you,
Does
Yasmin.
that
Thank
answer the question? The strategy is to collaborate, be informed, and then act as possible within the parameters of the challenges.
So I have another question for you. I'm reading it out loud again from the Q&A. There are many organizations helping orphans in the Middle East, specifically Arab countries, such as your organizations, SOS Children Villages and Sanad, and many others, of course. Are the efforts of those organizations sufficient, or there are still gaps to be addressed?
It's still gaps. I mean, the need is huge. We reconciled ourselves to the fact this will not be, even though the social sustainable development goals are set for 2030, no one in their right mind who is working in any of those sectors thinks we're actually going to achieve it. I think they are noble goals, but the efforts are insufficient. There are still gaps to be addressed. We listed some of them, and it was not an exhaustive list. So the more people we have interested and willing, I think, is the main thing to collaborate and try and contribute. Contributing collaboration is what I would call for, and that is based on individuals. Wherever they're found in the world, you can still help in the Middle East. You can still help in Gaza. You can still help in Bethlehem. You can still help in Syria, in Yemen, wherever in the Middle East. If there's an area of interest, please, let me know if you're interested in any of the countries we're working in. I will be happy to put you in touch with our national director and our teams and staff and families there. But I just want to come back to Yasmin's statement, because the one of the things that we don't do, we don't parade the orphans out. So that's one of the things in orphanages that was, I think, a great evil and abusive towards the children. Oh, look at these poor children. You need to help support them. but that is actually infringes on their rights as human beings to parade them for the intent of raising resources or, garnering sympathy. So if we do have people that visit or want to visit the villages to make some kind of physical or resource contribution, that is very tightly controlled. They have to sign agreements beforehand, and once there, no pictures of the children are taken. It's just that these are human beings. They're not show ponies or show animals. You can, it's very rare to be able to access a village and have time with some of them. So, yeah. Sorry, long answer, short answer is the efforts are not sufficient. Sorry. Maybe they are, and Sanad, I know, Yasmin, you have to say if yours are sufficient or not. Ours, no.
I totally agree with you, Harry, and that's why one of the things we added in our new strategy, which started actually this year till 2030, is actually collaborating with other NGOs and transferring our knowledge, our expertise and experience, and try to help other NGOs to work and include them in and start including the children without parental care within their mandate, whether they are existing NGOs, but we're not working in this scope, or they are new NGOs who are interested in starting working and addressing this topic. So because we felt that there is responsibility and it's a huge topic and it needs lots of players. So we felt that maybe we can support by strengthening the ecosystem by actually working towards this direction.
Oh, we're getting more questions. That's great. So I'll just take another one. Now, if a group home or a small orphanage is to be built in a community, is there any recommended ratio of orphan children in the neighborhood to other children, adults, to enable them to feel hope, to feel some sense of normality to the community or society?
Yasmin, do you want to lead with that?
If I understood the question correctly, you are talking here that within the care home, we will have a variation of ages. And if there is a ratio of the number of children within the care home, am I right? Is this the question?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, for example, in Egypt, we've just recently, through a ministerial decree, we set some criteria for the small homes, and we agreed that it's going to be around 6 to maximum 9 children. Yet, we advocated that the existing orphanages right now, we do not separate the children if they are 20, because if they are old already, we are preparing them for the aftercare. So let's not rush and separate them because this will contribute to their trauma. Another criteria we added in this ministerial decree is actually to have different variation of age brackets, but maintaining also child protection, that we will not have a huge gap. Like, for example, a 2-year old child and, for example, like 16 or 17-year-old. This is a huge gap. But we need to have this variation of age because they, as you said, normality, but also to learn, because we used to learn from our older siblings. So this will give this not only normality, but also will help to build the capacity of the child, both of them, the older one and the younger one.
Great. And I think the second part of the same question is also the ratio of the size of the orphanage, the institution, to the neighborhood. So they can, from what I understand, if I'm correct, if I understand correctly, so they can interact with others and feel, a sense of community and normality.
Harry, you want to say something?
No, go ahead and share your experience,
Okay.
and I have something to add, please.
Okay, so far it's just like an apartment. It's not a building. It's what the plan is. And actually, there are orphanages in Egypt in this form. It's just an apartment within a building. So there is no like a ratio of size, because it's not like a separate building from the neighborhood. But yes, there are separate buildings from the neighborhood, which is the large and big orphanages. So, but there is no ratio for this so far.
So we've taken it a step further. We don't refer to any children in our care as orphans. In reality, they're orphans. We don't call them that, because that carries a certain stigma and social, consideration for that. So we mainly because we're 75 years old, this organization, we've learned a lot along the way. So we go with whatever the local family size is, that's what we have in our homes. So most of the areas, for example, in the Middle East and Africa, they have anywhere from 6 to 9 children per home. That's what we have. And because we've been traditionally in villages, that the ratio in the community wasn't an issue. Our effort now to transition the homes into the community is determined in collaboration with community-based organizations. So we're trying to make sure the children feel included and complete part of that community.
Great. I'm mindful of the time, and so I'll go to since Harry was speaking, there is a question for Harry regarding SOS Children Villages. How was the age increase to 24 useful to the youth?
It takes off their stress. They're not required to stay until 24, but there are opportunities, either investment in their college education or a trade school. For example, we are setting up something that we actually launched at the Dubai Expo, which was 2020, but this was 21. It was delayed because of COVID, called the Circular Entrepreneurship Center. And that's using a small set of plastic recycling machines to train the youth, one, about the environment and the plastic waste, giving them experience on micro manufacturing. They can melt and make the plastic into different forms, and then teaching them about setting up their own business, sales, marketing, business planning, all of that. So we have sent recently a set to Benin, Natatingo. So we have a group of youth that were under our care. Now they're 17 to 24, and they are learning how to work with those machines and becoming entrepreneurs, if you will, through that. So it's a question, once again, it goes back to listening to the youth, seeing what they want to do, and helping them to support that.
And this coming question is for Yasmin. Do you recommend that ongoing projects aiming to include children and youth without parental care would need guidance, awareness, practical tools, and would your organizations provide this? Example, an economic empowerment program aiming to include adolescents and youth need to tailor their activities, content, outcomes.
Yes, I confirm. First of all, yes, there is a need for guidance, because sometimes not all organizations are aware of what we call trauma-informed, and the effect of this trauma on the behavior and the thinking pattern of children and youth who went through trauma. So our role and what we actually aspire to do is to support organizations who want to include children and youth without parental care by understanding more about them and understanding how they can tailor their programs and services to be able to work with them effectively and successfully. Also, not all organizations are familiar of how to reach out orphanages. So many of the organizations, sometimes they call us and they tell us, can you help us actually to link us with orphanages that we can work with? This is another thing we do. So we do help in better understanding children and youth without parental care. We provide also training about how to have safeguarding and protection policy within your organization, because this is very important when we work with marginalized youth or children. And we also facilitate and support the linkage between the organizations, the NGOs, and the orphanages in Egypt. So yes, and we are very much interested even to scale up this role.
Great. One more question. Foster systems are a bit different to kafala system in the Arab countries. In your opinion, can we implement the foster system here as well for temporary or short-term placement, for example?
Harry, would you like to share your opinion, or should I jump in? What do you
Why
want?
don't you jump in first, and then I'll add my 1 penny to that, or my 1 dirham.
Okay, I will talk about Egypt because this is, for me, it was discussed together with other civil society members and with the Ministry of Social Solidarity. It is one of the forms, we have to say, foster family. And yes, let me explain to the audience what's the difference. Foster family system, actually, they place the child within a family for a certain period, temporarily, okay? Till either he is being or she's being reintegrated within their family or being placed in an orphanages. This is simply the foster family system. So it's a temporary thing, and sometimes it's paid. The kafala system, it's equal to adoption. It's like you're raising your own child with certain conditions. One of them, you don't give your full name to the child, but you can give your family name or your first name to the child. Okay? Now, we advocate for kafala. Foster family system worldwide, it has its own challenges, because again, it's contributing to the trauma of the child being placed, because one child could be placed in several families. This is one thing. The other thing, getting paid for raising a child, we are not sure about how correct is this and how this could be abused. The third thing is, due to the lack of the number of social workers in the Ministry of Social Solidarity, and this is, Harry mentioned this worldwide, that there is always a gap between the demand and the supply, between the size of the problem and the number of the people working on the problem. So having a small number of social workers currently in the Ministry of Social Solidarity actually tells us that we need to be cautious, because when you have different forms of alternative care without having strong monitoring and supervision system, this could harm the child. So for all these reasons, we are not really advocating for, yet it is in the newly developed law, because we work together with the Ministry of Social Solidarity to have a law for alternative care, but it's currently being discussed in the parliament. But we add it as one of the form, but we always feel that this might not be the best resort. Harry, what do you think?
I think you answered that extremely well. I think basically, because we do not have specific programs, houses, or villages in the Gulf region, specifically because of the political sensitivities. So I don't want to go too far down that way. Obviously, the government has responsibility for taking care of abandoned children. We have not been invited. We're available, but we have not been invited to join in that conversation or collaboration for delivery. I think using the United States as a case, much like you were saying, the foster system in the US has created more problems than solutions over the years. So people taking in children for pay rather than out of their loving care for their heart has resulted in unfortunate level of abuse. I have no facts or figures in that. I just know folks that have been through the system, and I have yet to find someone who was happy about it. So I think the kafala system with the idea of longer term commitment, much like we in SOS make. It's not for a set period of time. It's to see these children from babies. I've met babies in the villages all the way through 24 years. And you've got to feel like they belong, they're cared for, they're loved. And then also, because if you've got a small home and an organization, then they're building their network, something you have from your regular family. Your family knows other people, they can help you either for a job or education and elsewise.
I'm very mindful of the time,
Okay.
and we have two more questions. So maybe if people are willing to stay for another couple of minutes, we can go through them quickly. So I'll take the first one. How do we ensure that orphanages or care centers are fully funded in the long term? Because many governments may not be able to support them for extended periods, especially for orphans from other conflict-torn regions. Is there any sustainability measures for these centers outside of charity?
One of the things actually we advocate for with the orphanage management and founder is actually the concept of being a social entrepreneur rather than a charitable organization. But let's agree that this needs lots of time and effort, because the mindset and the skills of the founders and the management within orphanages are completely different than people working on social entrepreneurs and working on how to make business or social business model to gain return, a financial return. So it's completely different mindset. But some of there are different modalities in Egypt. For example, there are big NGOs who have actually the orphanage and other social enterprises, where the fund of the social enterprises is actually covering the expenses of the orphanages. Some of the NGOs, they have hospital, part of the hospital is charitable, and the other part is actually with fees, where actually they cover the expenses of the orphanage. This is one thing. Yet this concept needs actually more effort, more time to be better institutionalized. Also, having small homes might support to reduce the cost a little bit than big organizations. Having also child sponsors is actually supporting this, but child sponsors without abusing the child. Because again, as Harry said, sometimes we fall into a trap where actually, because getting the donation from the sponsor or the volunteer coming visiting the orphanage, we forget sometimes the protection mechanism and the right of the child to be protected and to be respected. So sometimes it could harm the child rather than benefiting the child. Harry, do you want to add something here?
Absolutely. We are on a big push right now to move from charity to investment and collaboration. So once again, I think it's addressing the core strategies and opportunities, and developing and building those according to the cultural local context. So, for example, we run the largest hospital in Somalia. And that is, once again, there's a charity side and then there's an entrepreneur side. So it's actually self-perpetuating. We actually make enough money off of the investment side to be able to run the charity side. But getting people, we are trying to work more on, I think this one, philanthropy, but essentially philanthropic investment, impact investment. That's what we're moving towards. Trying to get people away from, oh, if you give us $100 or 100 dirham, we're just going to send you more mail. We're going to come back and ask you for 1,000. No one really enjoys that. So it's better to think about, if you give us money, then we're going to create this and it will carry on. So I think it's just changing the organization's mindset.
Thank you. I see more questions are coming in, so I'm going to suggest, since we are already 7 minutes beyond our session's time, and I don't want to keep people waiting, that since we have the contact information for Harry and Yasmin, if you have any further questions, please contact them directly. I will resend the contact information, the email addresses in the follow-up email. Harry, Yasmin, thank you so much for this informative session. I think it's unbelievable and quite engaging conversation. And I would let you say a couple of things before we end the session.
Yasmin, please.
I want to thank AFF, because once we talked about the topic, they welcomed the idea. So thank you so much. And I really enjoyed working with Harry. Thank you so much, and learning from you. Also, despite the fact that we did not hear the audience, but I can sense the engagement. So I would like to thank the audience for their time and their passion. I know how busy everyone is nowadays. So thank you for sparing or making the time actually to listen and to get engaged in such important topic. Looking forward for exploring means of collaboration very soon, or in the future, in the near future.
So we have a proverb in the tribe that I belong to in the Congo that says, "Panga chena na adolfo fela," which means once met, never forget. So we will not forget your questions, your participation in this. We hope to hear from you individually. Shukran to both Yasmin and Walid for a wonderful time. Yasmin, it's been a joy collaborating. I look forward to more work together, focusing on Egypt and the great things we can do there. Walid, it's an honor to be a part of AFF. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for all of you that joined us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening or a great day, wherever you are in the world.